Behind the ghoulish grins and monster makeup of America's favorite spooky family lay secrets darker than Grandpa's basement laboratory. From coffins stolen in midnight heists and actors melting under studio lights to forbidden love potions and careers destroyed by superhero rivalries, the Munsters harbored shocking truths that would make even Herman's bolts stand on end. These 15 spine-tingling revelations will forever change how you see 1313 Mockingbird Lane. Fact 1. Herman's makeup was purple, not green. When you think of Herman Munster, you probably picture that iconic green-skinned Frankenstein's monster stumbling around the family living room. But here's something that would shock even the most dedicated Munsters fan. Herman was never actually green during the original TV series. Fred Gwynne's face was painted a bright, vibrant purple every single day of filming. This wasn't some weird artistic choice or a mistake by the makeup department. The purple makeup was actually a brilliant technical decision that solved a major problem with 1960s television production. Since The Munsters was filmed entirely in black and white, the makeup artists needed to find a color that would photograph well under the intense studio lighting and show up with the right contrast on film. After extensive testing, the makeup team discovered that bright violet paint captured and reflected light much better than any other color they tried. When filmed with black and white cameras, this purple makeup created the perfect gray tones and shadows that made Herman look appropriately monstrous and menacing on screen. Green makeup, which you might expect them to use, actually appeared too dark and muddy when filmed in black and white. The makeup process was incredibly detailed and time-consuming. Every morning, Fred Gwynne would sit in the makeup chair for 3 hours while artists carefully applied layers of this special violet grease paint to his entire face and neck. The color was so bright and unusual that visitors to the set were often startled when they saw Gwynne between takes, looking like some kind of purple creature from another planet. This purple Herman only existed during the original TV series from 1964 to 1966. When the Munsters eventually made the transition to color television in later movies and reunion specials, Herman finally got his now famous green complexion that most people associate with the character today. Fact 2. The Dragula car used a real stolen coffin. The Dragula, Grandpa Munster's coffin-shaped drag racing car, wasn't just designed to look like a coffin, it was literally built from a real coffin that had to be obtained through what can only be described as a covert operation. When legendary car customizer George Barris and his team at Barris Custom Industries set out to create this iconic vehicle for the Munsters, they quickly discovered that getting their hands on an actual coffin would be much more complicated than they expected. The problem was California law in the 1960s, which made it completely illegal to purchase a coffin without presenting a valid death certificate. This regulation was designed to prevent fraud and ensure that funeral products were only sold for legitimate purposes, but it created a major headache for the Barris team, who needed a real fiberglass coffin to serve as the body of their custom dragster. Enter Richard Corky Corks, Barris's resourceful project engineer, who refused to let legal red tape stop the project. Corks approached a funeral director at a funeral home in North Hollywood and worked out an arrangement that was technically legal but definitely unconventional. The funeral director agreed to help, but the transaction had to happen completely off the books and under cover of darkness. Here's how the deal went down. Corks paid cash for the coffin during normal business hours, but he walked away empty-handed with no receipt or paperwork. Later that same night, he returned to the funeral home with several crew members, where they found the fiberglass coffin had been mysteriously left outside the back door of the building. The team quietly loaded it into their truck and drove away into the night, having successfully obtained their coffin without technically violating any laws. This real coffin became the centerpiece of the Dragula, which appeared in the episode Hot Rod Herman and became one of the most memorable cars in television history. Fact 3. Fred Gwynne lost 10 pounds from sweating. Playing Herman Munster wasn't just acting for Fred Gwynne, it was essentially an extreme endurance challenge that pushed his body to its absolute limits every single day of filming. The massive costume that transformed the already tall actor into the lovable Frankenstein's monster weighed approximately 50 pounds and included thick foam rubber padding covering his entire body, platform boots that added 5 inches to his height, and layers of heavy makeup that took 3 hours to apply each morning. The real problem came when Gwynne stepped under the blazing hot studio lights that were necessary for 1960s television production. The combination of the insulated costume and the intense heat created a portable sauna that trapped every bit of warmth against his body. Within minutes of filming, Gwyn would begin sweating so heavily that the moisture would literally cause his carefully applied makeup to start sliding down his face in purple streams. The physical toll was so severe that Gwyn lost 10 pounds during just the first month of filming, despite drinking gallons of lemonade between takes in a desperate attempt to stay hydrated. Guest actor Ted Eccles, who appeared in an episode, described how the crew had to constantly stop filming to let Gwyn cool down, saying that he was good for only 2 or 3 takes before he needed a break to prevent overheating. The situation became so concerning that the production team eventually rented a compressed air tank and rigged a system where they could poke the nozzle inside Gwyn's collar to blow cool air directly onto his skin between scenes. Even with this makeshift cooling system, the makeup department had to be constantly on standby to repair his melting face paint, and the famous foam latex headpiece that flattened the top of his head would sometimes come completely loose from all the perspiration, requiring up to an hour to reapply properly. Fact 4. Grandpa was younger than his TV daughter. One of the most amusing casting secrets from the Munsters involves a complete reversal of the natural order that nobody watching the show would ever suspect. Al Lewis, who played the ancient vampire Grandpa Munster, was actually 1 full year younger than Yvonne DiCarlo, the actress who portrayed his daughter Lily. This means that throughout the entire series, a younger man was convincingly playing the father of an older woman, despite the characters having an age gap of several centuries. Al Lewis was born on April 30th, 1923, while Yvonne DiCarlo entered the world on September 1st, 1922. The irony becomes even more pronounced when you consider that Grandpa's character was supposed to be an immortal vampire who had lived for hundreds of years and accumulated vast wisdom and experience over the centuries. Meanwhile, Lily was portrayed as his much younger vampire daughter who still deferred to her father's authority and sought his advice on family matters. The age reversal didn't stop there because Fred Gwyn, who played Herman Munster and was supposed to be Lily's husband, was actually younger than both of them. Gwyn was born in 1926, making him the youngest of the 3 main adult cast members despite playing the head of the household. This created a situation where the supposed patriarch and matriarch of the family were actually being portrayed by the 2 youngest actors in the core cast. The makeup and costume departments did such an exceptional job transforming Lewis into the elderly grandpa character that audiences never questioned the family dynamics they were seeing on screen. Lewis's wild white hair, hunched posture, and raspy voice created such a convincing portrayal of an ancient vampire that the real-world age difference became completely invisible, proving that good acting and skilled makeup artistry can make any family relationship believable on television. Fact 5. Mel Blanc voiced the sarcastic Raven. Hidden among the many memorable characters at 1313 Mockingbird Lane was a smart-mouthed raven who lived inside the family's cuckoo clock, and this minor character had one of the most famous voices in entertainment history behind it. Mel Blanc, the legendary voice actor known as the Man of 1,000 Voices, provided the distinctive voice for Charlie the Raven throughout the series, bringing his incredible vocal talents to this small but memorable role. Most people know Mel Blanc as the voice behind nearly every major Looney Tunes character, including Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Porky Pig, Tweety Bird, and dozens of others. But few realize that this same voice that brought cartoon rabbits and ducks to life also gave personality to the Munsters' sarcastic bird. Instead of a traditional cuckoo bird popping out to announce the time, the Munster family's clock featured Charlie the Raven, who would emerge to deliver Edgar Allan Poe's famous line, "Nevermore," along with various witty remarks and observations about the family's daily activities. The Raven served as a kind of Greek chorus for the show, commenting on the action and sometimes getting into verbal sparring matches with Herman, who would occasionally throw objects at the bird when Charlie's wisecracks became too annoying. The character was designed as a tribute to Poe's classic poem, The Raven, fitting perfectly with the show's gothic horror theme, while adding another layer of humor to the family's supernatural household. When Blanc wasn't available for recording sessions, another voice actor named Bob Hastings would sometimes fill in for the Raven's lines. Hastings was known for playing Lieutenant Carpenter on the sitcom McHale's Navy, and later voiced Commissioner Gordon in Batman the Animated Series. However, it was primarily Blanc's distinctive vocal styling that gave Charlie the Raven his memorable personality, and made those brief clock appearances into genuine comedic moments. Fact 6. The show was killed by Batman. The Munsters met its doom not from any vampire hunter or angry mob, but from a caped crusader who swooped in and stole its audience right out from under it. When ABC launched Batman starring Adam West and Burt Ward on January 12, 1966, the colorful superhero series delivered a fatal blow to the Munsters that the Monster family couldn't recover from, leading directly to the show's cancellation just a few months later. The timing couldn't have been worse for the Munsters, which had been performing reasonably well in the ratings and ranked as the 18th most popular show during its first season. Batman premiered with a unique broadcasting strategy that made it nearly impossible for competing shows to survive. The series aired twice a week, with cliffhanger episodes on Wednesday nights at 7:30 and resolution episodes on Thursday nights at exactly the same time the Munsters had been broadcasting on CBS. This scheduling created a perfect storm that devastated the Munsters' viewership. Audiences became completely hooked on finding out how Batman and Robin would escape each week's elaborate death trap, making Thursday night appointment television for millions of viewers who had previously been watching Herman and his family. The contrast between the shows made the situation even worse, as Batman was filmed in bright, vibrant color while the Munsters remained in black and white, making the superhero series seem more modern and exciting. Butch Patrick, who played Eddie Munster, later confirmed what everyone suspected when he told reporters that Batman just came along and took their ratings away. The damage was swift and decisive, with the Munsters' ratings dropping so dramatically that CBS canceled the series in May 1966, after only 70 episodes. Meanwhile, Batman became a massive cultural phenomenon that spawned countless merchandise and helped launch what became known as Batmania across the country. Fact 7. They shared a bed before it was acceptable. Herman and Lily Munster broke one of television's most rigid taboos by doing something that seems completely normal today but was absolutely scandalous in the 1960s. They shared a bed as a married couple. During this era, television networks had strict moral guidelines that required even married couples to sleep in separate twin beds, following the famous example set by shows like I Love Lucy, where Lucy and Ricky Ricardo were shown sleeping apart despite being husband and wife in real life. The reasoning behind this rule was that showing married couples in the same bed was considered too sexually suggestive for family television, even though these were supposed to be loving married couples with children. Network censors believed that sharing a bed implied intimacy that was inappropriate for viewers to witness, so they enforced the twin bed rule across virtually every family sitcom and drama of the time period. The Munsters managed to slip past these moral guardians through a bizarre loophole that nobody had anticipated. When network executives and censors reviewed the show, they apparently decided that the normal rules about married couples didn't apply to monsters. Since Herman and Lily were a Frankenstein's monster and a vampire rather than regular humans, the censors were more lenient about letting them share a bed than they would have been with a conventional husband and wife. This decision sparked some minor controversy among viewers who noticed the double standard, but it also opened up interesting questions about television's moral guidelines. The fact that monster couples were given more freedom than human couples highlighted how arbitrary and inconsistent these broadcasting rules really were. Herman and Lily's shared bed became a small but significant step toward changing television's portrayal of married relationships, proving that sometimes it takes monsters to show networks what normal married life actually looks like. Fact 8. Burt Lahr rejected the grandpa role first. Before Al Lewis ever donned the cape and fangs of Grandpa Munster, the role of the centuries-old vampire was actually offered to one of Hollywood's most beloved character actors from the golden age of cinema. Burt Lahr, who had achieved immortal fame as the Cowardly Lion in The Wizard of Oz back in 1939, was the producer's first choice to play Lily's ancient father and the family's resident mad scientist. Lahr had built an impressive career as both a stage and screen performer, known for his incredible physical comedy skills and distinctive voice that brought the nervous, lovable Cowardly Lion to life. His experience with heavy makeup and costume work from The Wizard of Oz would have made him a natural fit for the demanding role of Grandpa Munster, which required hours of daily makeup application and the ability to perform physical comedy while wearing elaborate vampire costumes. The casting decision would have created an interesting connection between two of the most famous fantasy productions in entertainment history, linking the magical world of Oz with the monster family of Mockingbird Lane. Lahr's established reputation and recognizable persona could have brought a different energy to the character, potentially making Grandpa more of a bumbling, nervous vampire rather than the mischievous and confident character that Al Lewis eventually created. However, for reasons that remain unclear to this day, Lahr decided to pass on the opportunity, Production records and interviews from the time period don't reveal exactly why he turned down the role, whether it was due to scheduling conflicts, creative differences, or simply a lack of interest in television work during an era when many movie stars still looked down on the medium. His rejection opened the door for Al Lewis to step into the role and create what would become his most memorable and beloved character performance. Fact 9. The lab used real Frankenstein movie props. Grandpa Munsters' basement laboratory wasn't just a television set decorated with fake scientific equipment. It was actually filled with authentic props that had been used in the original Universal monster movies from the 1930s and 40s. The man responsible for this incredible connection to horror movie history was Kenneth Strickfaden, a legendary special effects designer who had originally created the iconic laboratory equipment for the 1931 film Frankenstein, starring Boris Karloff. Strickfaden was a pioneer in creating convincing electrical effects and scientific apparatus for movies, and his work on the original Frankenstein film had established the visual template for what a mad scientist's laboratory should look like. His elaborate electrical contraptions, bubbling beakers, and mysterious scientific devices became the standard that every subsequent horror movie and television show would try to copy when they needed to create a convincing laboratory setting. When Universal Studios decided to produce the Munsters television series, they had the brilliant idea to bring Strickfaden back to design Grandpa's laboratory. Since Universal owned both the original Frankenstein films and the Munsters, they had access to all the original props and equipment that had been sitting in storage on the studio lot for decades. Rather than building everything from scratch, Strickfaden was able to pull many of the actual pieces he had created for the classic monster movies and incorporate them directly into the Munster family's basement. This meant that when viewers watched Grandpa working on his various experiments and magical potions, they were seeing some of the exact same laboratory equipment that had been used to bring Frankenstein's monster to life in the original movie. The connection gave the Munsters an authentic link to the golden age of Universal monster films and helped establish the show's credibility within the horror genre. Fact 10. Fred Gwynne got drunk for the Macy's parade. One of the most honest and revealing confessions about the physical misery of playing Herman Munster came from Fred Gwynne himself, who admitted to using alcohol as a coping mechanism during one of the show's most high-profile public appearances. In 1964, Gwynne and Al Lewis participated in the famous Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, riding down the streets of New York City in the Munster coach while wearing their full costumes and greeting thousands of excited fans who lined the parade route. What the cheering crowds and television viewers didn't know was that Gwynne was secretly drinking his way through the entire 40-block parade route to make the experience bearable. Years later, in a candid interview with TV Guide magazine, Gwynne confessed that he had been taking slugs from a bottle of whiskey throughout the entire parade because he had to get bombed just to be able to say hello to the little kids for 40 blocks. The admission reveals just how physically and emotionally draining it was for Gwynne to perform as Herman Munster in public settings. While the controlled environment of a television studio was challenging enough with the heavy costume and makeup, being outdoors in the cold November weather of New York City while trying to maintain the cheerful, friendly Herman persona for hours at a time pushed him to his breaking point. This was one of the rare occasions when Gwynne had to appear in full Herman costume outside of the studio, since the time and expense of the makeup and costume process usually made such public appearances impractical. The producers typically sent the other cast members to promotional events and store openings while keeping Gwynne safely on the studio lot. But the Macy's parade was too important an opportunity to pass up, even if it meant putting their star through an ordeal that required liquid courage to endure. Fact 11. The comics were banned by censors. When the Munsters became a television hit and merchandise opportunities started flooding in, publishers who wanted to create comic book versions of the show ran into an unexpected roadblock that had nothing to do with licensing or money. The Comics Code Authority, which was the industry's self-censorship organization established in 1954, had strict rules that completely prohibited any depiction of vampires in comic books, making it impossible for mainstream publishers to create Munsters comics featuring Lily and Grandpa. The Comics Code Authority had been created in response to public outcry about violent and scary content in comic books, and their guidelines were designed to keep anything potentially frightening or morally questionable away from young readers. Among their many restrictions was a blanket ban on vampires, werewolves, zombies, and other supernatural creatures that they considered too disturbing for children, even when those creatures were portrayed in a harmless or comedic way like they were on the Munsters. This created a frustrating situation where the family-friendly television show that aired during prime time and was specifically designed not to scare children couldn't be adapted into comics by major publishers like DC or Marvel, who were all members of the Comics Magazine Association of America and had to follow the code's rules. The ban applied regardless of how the vampires were portrayed, meaning that even the gentle, loving characters of Lily and Grandpa were considered off-limits. Fortunately, Gold Key Comics was an independent publisher that operated outside the Comics Code Authority and wasn't bound by their restrictions. From 1965 to 1968, Gold Key was able to produce 16 issues of the Munsters comic books that featured full-color photo covers from the television series and allowed fans to enjoy new adventures with their favorite monster family in a format that mainstream publishers were forbidden to touch. Fact 12. The pilot had different names and actors. The Munsters that audiences fell in love with in 1964 was actually a completely different show from what the creators originally pitched to CBS executives, and the changes were so dramatic that virtually nothing remained the same except for the basic concept of a monster family living in suburbia. The original pilot episode, which was filmed in full color and ran 16 minutes long, featured an entirely different cast and even different character names that bore little resemblance to the final version of the show. In this early version, Herman's wife wasn't named Lily at all, but was instead called Phoebe and was played by actress Joan Marshall, who had previously appeared in various television dramas and science fiction shows. The character of Eddie was also portrayed by a different child actor named Nate Happy Durman, whose interpretation of the young werewolf was apparently much more aggressive and animalistic than what the network wanted for a family-friendly comedy series. When CBS executives and affiliates viewed this original pilot presentation, their reaction was so negative that the network demanded major changes before they would consider moving forward with the series. The main problem seemed to be that Joan Marshall's appearance was considered too similar to Morticia Addams from the competing show that ABC was developing at the same time, which would have created confusion between the two Monster Family programs and potentially led to legal complications. The pilot was completely scrapped, and the producers had to start over with new casting and character development. Yvonne DiCarlo was brought in to replace Marshall as the newly renamed Lily Munster, while Butch Patrick took over the role of Eddie with a much gentler, more childlike approach to the character. The original color pilot was never aired on television and remained largely unseen by the public for decades, existing only as a historical curiosity that shows how different the Munsters could have been. Fact 13. Yvonne DiCarlo held up production daily. While Yvonne DiCarlo brought Hollywood glamour and star power to the Munsters as Lily Munster, her perfectionist approach to her appearance created constant tension on the set and regularly disrupted the show's tight production schedule. DiCarlo, who had been a major movie star before joining the television series, maintained the demanding standards and elaborate beauty routines that she had developed during her film career, but these habits proved to be a poor fit for the fast-paced world of television production. The most visible sign of DiCarlo's perfectionism was her constantly changing relationship with the show's hairdressing staff. Over the course of just 2 seasons, she went through 5 different hairdressers, apparently finding fault with each one's work and demanding replacements when their styling didn't meet her exacting standards. This created ongoing disruption since each new hairdresser had to learn how to create Lily's distinctive vampire look from scratch, leading to delays while they figured out the complex styling requirements. Beyond the hairdresser situation, DiCarlo would frequently hold up production by demanding minute adjustments to her makeup, nails, and costumes before she would agree to film her scenes. While other cast members would wait on set ready to work, DiCarlo would often retreat to her trailer for extended touch-up sessions, leaving the entire crew standing around until she emerged satisfied with her appearance. Fred Gwynne and Al Lewis, who had initially been concerned about working with a Hollywood movie star, found their worst fears confirmed by DiCarlo's behavior. Series writer and producer Joe Connolly later complained that the production team had to put up with a lot of difficulties from DiCarlo's demanding attitude. However, despite the behind-the-scenes friction, DiCarlo's professional skills as an actress were never questioned, and she delivered consistently strong comedic performances once the cameras were actually rolling. Fact 14. Fred Gwynne played 3 different characters. Fred Gwynne's versatility as an actor went far beyond his iconic portrayal of Herman Munster, as he actually played 3 completely different characters throughout the series, using various makeup techniques and costume changes that transformed him into entirely separate personalities. While most viewers only remember him as the lovable family patriarch, Gwyn's additional roles showcased his impressive range and the makeup department's ability to create distinct looks using the same actor. The first alternate character was Herman's twin brother Charlie Munster, who appeared in the episode titled Knock Wood, Here Comes Charlie. Unlike the innocent and childlike Herman, Charlie was a smooth-talking con artist and swindler who dressed in stylish clothing and carried himself with the confidence of a seasoned criminal. The makeup team created subtle differences in Charlie's appearance while keeping the basic Frankenstein monster features, giving him a more sophisticated and devious look that matched his scheming personality. The second additional character was Johann, who appeared in the episode A Visit from Johann during the show's second season. Johann was supposed to be one of Dr. Frankenstein's earlier experimental creations who had been living in the Transylvanian wilderness for over a century and a half. Unlike Herman's gentle nature, Johann was portrayed as simple-minded and primitive, representing what Herman might have been like if he hadn't been civilized by family life and social interaction. For Johann's appearance, the makeup department dressed Gwyn in the classic Frankenstein monster costume that closely resembled the original Boris Karloff look from the 1931 Universal film. This created an interesting visual contrast between the more modern, domesticated Herman and this wild, uncivilized version of the same basic creature. The episode cleverly used these character differences to explore Herman's own development and show how much his family relationships had shaped his personality over the years. Fact 15. An air compressor kept Herman cool. The physical demands of playing Herman Munster became so dangerous for Fred Gwynne that the production crew had to develop an emergency cooling system to prevent him from suffering serious heat-related health problems during filming. After Gwynne came dangerously close to collapsing from heat exhaustion while wearing the heavy costume under the blazing studio lights, the crew realized they needed to take immediate action to keep their star safe and the production running smoothly. The solution they came up with was both ingenious and desperate. They rented a large compressed air tank and rigged a system that allowed them to poke the air hose nozzle inside Gwynne's collar to blow cool air directly onto his overheated body between takes. This makeshift air conditioning system became an essential part of the daily filming routine, with crew members standing by with the air compressor whenever Gwynne needed relief from the suffocating heat trapped inside his costume. The cooling system worked in combination with Gwynne's own survival strategy of consuming enormous quantities of lemonade throughout each filming day. He would drink gallon after gallon of the cold beverage in a constant effort to stay hydrated and replace the fluids he was losing through perspiration. Despite these measures, the physical toll remained severe, and Gwynne would often be good for only 2 or 3 takes of any scene before he needed another cooling break. Guest actors who worked on the show were amazed by the elaborate routine required to keep Gwynne functional. Actor Ted Eccles, who appeared in one episode, described how they would have to wait about 5 minutes between rehearsal and actual filming while Gwynne was cooled down and refreshed. The air compressor became such a crucial piece of equipment that it was essentially treated as part of Gwynne's costume, always nearby, and ready to provide the life-saving blast of cool air that made his performance possible.